Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this episode we are going to review this 2016 Honda Africa Twin CRF 1000L that also has the DCT gearbox, including the good, the bad and the ugly. Hang on, don't zoom in on my face, cameraman. I look gorgeous. Anyway, cue the intro. So if you're looking at buying a Honda Africa Twin, let's just go through quickly the history of it. At the end of the 80s, they made the 650 version. And then during basically the 90s, they made the 750 that became very iconic. But most people back then were buying Fireblades and more sports bikes and sports tourers, and the adventure bike wasn't such a big thing. Then in 2016 they made a comeback with this 2016 Honda Africa Twin CRF 1000L. They made this either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed basically automatic DCT. Right now though, there is a newer version. So from 2020 to present, they have made a 1100cc version, basically trying to compete against the great BMW GS 1200. But today we're doing a brutally honest review of my 2016 model. So basically this is the first generation of the new Africa Twin, and being the DCT, it causes quite a bit of interest, manual or DCT, but we'll jump into that later. Let's first of all go through the specs. Now this engine creates 998cc that basically shy of 94 brake horsepower and 98 newton meters of torque. The rear suspension has preload that you can turn left or right. What I find is you generally need a screwdriver. Now obviously if you're on a big tour with loads of weight on, then it's absolutely awesome. Or if you're really fat, you can adjust it to make the suspension nice and firm to give you that better ride. Now one of the things I find quite interesting about the chain, if you tighten the chain to the specifications, it's more difficult to push and you can hear it on the road. Slightly loose seems to make a massive difference. Personally though, I'd rather have a shaft drive because I don't actually have to clean the chain, what I find a pain up the butt. Now seat height, this is kind of a bit of an issue as well, because I'm not the massive tallest person in the world. I'm 5'8", but I've got reasonably long legs. Now the seat height in the normal position is 871. That kind of means that I am slightly on my tiptoes, but there is a lower position if you can find it, and I have found it once, and what I found was that I'm still slightly on my tiptoes but not as much, and almost able to put my feet down, and that's 850 millimeters. But the other side about having it in the low position, I found with the seat, it's actually quite uncomfortable on long distances, so I've instantly gone back to the normal position. So be aware, if you're not somebody that likes tippy toes, it's a little bit of an issue. Of course, you can easily move around to get your feet down, so it's no problem at all, but just be aware that seat height is quite tall, but it is an adventure bike. Now it's also got obviously a bash plate, a double exhaust. Now the reason why I say double is it's not a 2-in-1, because if you can see, the exhaust flows down and it literally comes out as 2 exhausts out the back that gives it a nice crisp sound. Now the rear end kind of has that kind of metal framing going on, doesn't it, here? That's quite nice, gives it that rugged look. Plus right here is where the panniers can go on. I do have a set of panniers and they do fit in really nicely. They have that metal look, but they're the plastic panniers that I've got with this bike, but there's plenty of space and they work really well. Now with the boring spec stuff done, shall we have the fun part? Let's talk about looks and see what it's like out on the road. So for me, looks, isn't it something stunning? It's got a beautiful big Africa Twin going on there. It's kind of got this sort of angry, kind of like it's going to hurt you front look to it as well. The crash bars just add that more adventure look inside to it. There is quite a lot of plastic, without a shadow of a doubt, that makes it quite easy to change if there's a problem. But it has got that plastic look to it as well. But it's kind of got that off-road, slightly motocross, dirty, painful look. What gives it that uniqueness, that serious uniqueness. Now at last, the fun bit, actually being out on the road, how it feels, what the speed's like, and the big question that's on everyone's lip, is the DCT any good, or should they just look for a manual one? So let's first of all do the 94 horsepower pull-off test, because it's the fun bit. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Whoa! I had to pull off the throttle a little bit then. Oh, it's made my heart jump. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is... Whew, that's 94 horsepower. And I'll be completely honest, for many years back in the day, back in those 90s, I very much like my sports bikes. Well, early 2000s, because I'm really young, but I very much like my sports bikes, and I've got to say, that has that pull that when you full throttle it, you don't expect it, and it flies. It absolutely flies. Oh, I feel a bit gazeboed. Oh, I should have worn a Power Ranger costume for that. So let's talk about the gearbox and the DCT side of things. So it's basically an automatic. Now for me and filming, it is unbelievably good, and let me explain why. Because obviously I do a lot of stuff where I'm talking to camera and I'm very vocal, and I do a lot of stuff to do my 360 and stuff like this. And the one thing that this I don't sort of have to worry about, I should say, is I don't have to worry about being down in that gear coming up to like a bend, because it will do it all for me, so I can concentrate very much on riding and filming at the same time. Now what's strange about the DCT is that you will hear that clonk, and that clonk is basically changing gear. And sometimes you hear it because it does it quite quickly and reasonably smoothly. You'll go, oh, what was that? And it was changing gear. Now it has basically 4 kind of rider modes. It's got D, S1, 2 and 3. What brings me to that, D isn't even really worth using. It's good for pulling off the drive, as in to move it, to clean it, etc. But D for me stands for Deirdre. Extremely boring and placid, that you do not want to get sat next to at a Christmas do, because you will be asleep or drinking lots of alcohol to try and keep yourself entertained. It's like that. It is really sluggish, and if you pull off in D, that I've done before and started riding, I'm like, oh, this bike feels a bit lacking, is the word, lacking. Now obviously there's Sports 1, Sports 2 and Sports 3. Sport 2 is what everyone recommends. They call it the sweet spot, and to be fair, it is. Sports 1, Sports 1's a bit lacking. Sport 3 is basically race mode to go on a track, because it just holds the revs up constantly. Sports 2 isn't perfect, but it is the sweet spot for this gearbox. Now Sport 2, the problem that you find is if you're cruising obviously at the speed limit, and you feel like you're on a nice straight road or a bit of motorway or somewhere like that, what happens is that you want it to basically, you want it to change up gear, and automatically you shouldn't have to touch anything at all, but it will hold it, and it's really that sort of 4th gear. It will hold in that 4th gear and sound like it's revving its bum off, basically. What's awesome if you're overtaking somebody, like, oh, listen to the sound of that bike, but you're going, change up. Why aren't you changing up? And now the thing of it is, it will change up eventually, it will happen, but it's annoying. And the plus side of it is you can manually change the gears on the joysticks here on the left, so you can go down a gear like pressing this, or you can press on top and it will go up a gear. So it does work just fine. It does work okay, and you can adjust it, but it's a bit clunky on that aspect with the DCT. But that is really the only drawback at all with the DCT. I know it's one of those difficult things where you'll sit there going, no, I've got to have a manual gear because I love that clunking down and revving it up. Trust me, you can turn this throttle and you can go in an unbelievable pace where you look down and you go, whoa, I should really back off. So that's kind of the thing. It works really well. It's weird not having that clutch 100% and not having the gear stick down there that you can change up and down with, but once you get used to it, it's basically a twist and go crazy beast on an adventure bike. I'd love to get my hands on one of the new ones to give it a try. I generally would, but that's it. So it's up to you on that gearbox kind of thing. Manuals are great, everything else. Here we go, look, it's holding that throttle at exactly 4th gear, just as I explained. and it's like, come on, change it, but I can't. By pressing the button on the side, click, it's into gear, it's nice and smooth again. Now onto the ergonomics of riding the bike and the comfort level as you're going along. Now, as I said, I'm 5'8", and what I'm generally finding why I'm riding this bike, for me, this is the perfect position. The bars are in the correct height for me. My arms are in a nice place. I don't get any of that kind of arm ache. There's not massive vibration through the bars at all. It's quite smooth and slick, so I don't get pins and needles on a long ride. Seat comfort, on the other hand, the standard seat is not comfortable for a big distance. The person that had this before me has put on a gel seat onto this. I even find that not comfortable for long distance. So what I'd recommend is getting yourself a pair of these riding pants that are out now that are lined for touring, to spread that weight out, the pressure points, or potentially look at getting yourself an engine hawk seat or something just to add that little bit of comfort. But I don't find it comfortable on the long rides. It might just be because I'm super skinny, muscly and fit and healthy, and I've got a Lord base, and British Lord, I've got a Lord's bottom, and that's the problem. Or it might just be me, but that's my personal opinion. So the display and the controls. Now this isn't TFT, but obviously it's got a digital display that's got so much information. Now in regards to lighting and stuff like this, you can see the display when you're riding along. This is a really crisp hot day here in the UK, and I can see that perfectly still. You've got your fuel gauge just there, you've got your rev counter here, your miles per gallon there, you got what gear that you're in here. So obviously we're in neutral at the moment. Traction control is fully switched on. It is adjustable just over here. You can turn traction control off, also at different levels. Then you've got your air temperature outside, plus you've got down here, you've got obviously how many miles you've done and fuel consumption and so on. I would say about the temperature gauge at the bottom is hid behind the wires, but you have got one of them as well as all these lovely lit side things. So if you've got engine management problems, for example, for me, I've just done an emergency recording. For me, you've got obviously fog lights. That's a factory extra that's just here for a switch. You can turn off your ABS underneath here as well. Stop start on this side. This is where you can switch into D or sports mode for your gearbox. You've got hazard warning lights there, auto or manual for your gearbox as well, where you can change down and you can change up on the back, what is easy to reach as you're riding along. Indicators, horn, obviously your main being lights. This also has heated grips that work really well, factory fitted again. And the other side of it is you've got your selection and set here if you want to do things like adjust your time, change what you want on your display. So it is full of gadgets. What it hasn't got is cruise control, and this is the reason why I use this as here, what a lot of people love or hate. Personally, I've got them on all of my bikes. I use this just as I'm on a motorway to slide it down, to give that hand a bit of rest if I'm riding for a long amount of time and want to have a little bit of a stretch. Other than that, that's all I'd ever use cruise control for anyway. But that's what it's lacking, cruise control. It's full of everything else. It's got lots of gadgets. That now brings me on to bends, cornering. This bike loves bends. It is confident, inspiring on handling. I generally feel like I am riding a sports bike. It enjoys it that much. It breaks in perfectly. You can just tilt yourself into the bend and it follows that true line all the way around. And if you want to get your knee on the floor, you could get your knee on the floor on this. It's tall, but it's agile and it enjoys every single second. So do not be worried that this tall big bike is going to be rubbish if you want to go out for a blast. It feels like the Fireblade of adventure bikes. You've got that unbelievable grunt at the turn of the throttle. The DCT's not worrying about the gearbox, and it just holds those lines gorgeously, absolutely gorgeously. It is such a fun machine to ride and handles perfect. Then of course, being an adventure bike, if you fancy doing a little bit of field roads, green laning, off-roading, this bike has got you sorted. It really does handle every bump and little turn just easy. It just seems to enjoy it. It likes to soak it up and just, it's a pleasure. That's all I can really say. It's such a pleasure. Now having the DCT again is a little bit of a bonus because I'm not having to worry if I'm in first or second. I can just concentrate on the trail and enjoy the ride. that would normally at this point would be the moment that I go, I'm going to send up the drone and capture you some unbelievable epic shots of me riding down this absolutely fantastic, beautiful field road. But unfortunately, some cables decided that they wanted to attack my drone, and I kid you not just once but twice they wanted to attack my drone. So it basically jumped out, whacked my drone once these power cables. The drone managed to pick itself back up again in midair and then go straight back up and hit the second set of cables, meaning that it crashed. But no fear, I'm hoping my drone is going to be fixed, because a guy called Joe from the Works channel, that's a gynecologist, has turned around and said don't worry, he will get it sorted so I can get it up and play with it all over again. So we should have some epic drone shots hopefully back here on some reviews in the future. But I tell you what, this bike handles this with ease and comfort, and I reckon I could do miles and miles of trail. So the Africa Twin really does again give you inspiring confidence to take a big adventure bike down some interesting roads. It's just, look at that vista, and this bike together is something seriously special. Well, that is my 2016 Honda Africa Twin review done, with warts and all. And the big question I always ask myself when I've owned a bike and I'm reviewing it, would I buy it again? And the answer is yes, and I don't plan on selling this anytime soon. And now it has got the few issues that, you know, are niggly, but they're little issues that don't really matter because you can change up gear. But the power, what this bike does for me, the workhorse, the adventure if I want to go on, being able to do some green laning, be able to do all the things that I could possibly want to do. There is some bikes out there that I think look better. There are some bikes out there that I'd love to own. But this is a do everything bike, and it really impresses me. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you have enjoyed it and you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. If you know anybody that's interested in buying a Honda Africa Twin, please share this video as well. And I will see you in the next bonkers helmet head adventure, where hopefully we'll do something absolutely awesome with this Africa Twin and push it to some more and more limits. Anyway, I'll catch you next time. Bye bye for now.